Like most of the country, from the southern states, Midwest, East Coast, we got a little bit of snowstorm too. Granted, we don't have near the ice on the tree limbs, breaking them down and power lines like they've had in the south. And I don't have several feet of snow like I do in New England country. But it's still doing it here. Anyway, welcome back to Wednesday, the 28th of January, 2026. And because the weather's nasty outside today, we're going to go inside and take care of a project indoors today. Not real exciting, not real thrilling, but at least it's something going on. If y'all recall, in my last video, I made a comment about how I needed a woman in my life to keep me on the old straight and narrow path, and go in the right direction, because, I might do something silly like buy that great big wide lawn sweeper contraption. Yeah, well, anyway, I've decided I don't need one woman in my life. I actually need two. Yeah, that way if I fall asleep at my desk, or am otherwise occupied, or fall asleep behind the wheel of the truck, at least I'll have somebody else to talk to besides screaming at me. Yeah. This is the wall of nut and washer bins that I was working on this winter, and I've gotten in some parts and pieces to fill the thing with. Anyway, this is all tagged, labeled, and ready to go now. So we'll get what I got loaded into the bins, and eventually we'll get this out into the shop and get it on a wall so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, what I just said a second ago, though, about the bins are all labeled and ready to go, not so much. So let me show you what I did. It was the same thing I did on the earlier set of bins that I had over at the farm in that shop. I had the bins labeled for 1/4 inch, 5/16, 3/8, 7/16, 1/2 inch, 9/16, and that's the first 6 bins in each one of these sections of bins, okay? Then I went from 9/16, starting in the second row of bins, to 5/8, and then I had 11/16, 3/4, 13/16, an inch. That doesn't work because even though there are 13/16 and 15/16 nuts out there, the common usage of those is almost non-existent. And they're almost impossible to find. In fact, I think in the shop over at the farm, the only nuts I had in those bins were ones that I'd found when I took something apart and saved them. So what I've done is this. I've gotten rid of the 11/16 and the 15/16, moved the 3/4 down to this position, which is a common size nut that's available and usable in farm equipment and whatever else I might be working on. I've created a 7/8 inch nut. Well, 7/8 inch bin, period, whether it's nuts, washers, lock washers, castle nuts, or whatever. So there'll be a 3/8 bin in this position, and then 1 inch, and that'll give me, instead of 1 empty bin at the end, it'll give me 2. Now those 2 extra bins is going to come in real handy for like rolls of Teflon tape, rolls of electrical tape, the little felt washers of battery acid neutralizers you put on top of your automotive battery post cleaners, spark plug ends, the little thing that screws on and off the end that your wire attaches to. You name it. Huge possibilities, almost endless of the things I can put in are cotter pins. I think over at the shop I must have had 5 or 6 bins full of the more commonly used size of cotter pins that I used around the farm. And garden hose washers. So yeah, those bins are going to get filled up. I've got new labels coming, and as they get here, I will label them all up. Especially like right here, I had one extra label floating around that wasn't used. So I went ahead and labeled it for 7/8 inch hex nuts with coarse thread. This one will be a 7/8 inch lock washer. And then the other bins will be, 7/8 hex nuts, fine thread, 7/8 flat washers, etc., so forth and so on. And then, like I said, electrical tape, Teflon tape, cotter pins, and that'll occupy the end 2 per row. Anyway, that's done for now, other than changing out those labels. I'm not worried about the residue of the sticky stuff left on the face of the other bins that I've removed the paper part of the label from, because there's going to be a label right over the top of it. And those labels will be here any day now. So, yeah, I'm not going to worry about that a bit. And then, like I said, we'll get that workbench built that I bought all the hardware for a month or so ago. We'll get it finally put together when we can get into the shop when the weather starts to behave. Get that assembled, and then we'll put all these bins on top of that and attach them to the wall. Do you know why in the Bible God created man first instead of the woman first? It's because God didn't need advice on what he was doing wrong and how to do it right. Yeah. Yeah. As many of you probably have noticed over the years of watching YouTube videos, most YouTubers do not talk about their family members. However, in this case today, we're going to talk about a family member that died during World War II, CL-47, and a pith helmet. Not P-I-T-H, pith helmet. Yeah. So let's jump into it. All right, what we're going to talk about today is a little bit different off the normal course of restoring old iron, but it does have something to do with an antique photograph of a family member of mine that was taken back in 1938-39, pre-World War II. And we're going to give you a little rundown on what it's all about, including the pith helmet that you can see over my shoulder. These things are super lightweight. That particular one is not a military issue. It was bought off the shelf at a port stop in South Africa. Okay, so what I'm talking about today has to do with the USS Boise, CL-47, which was a Brooklyn-class light cruiser built prior to World War II. In fact, it was launched on December 3rd, 1936. They'd finished it out, and it was commissioned in 1938. It saw action in the Mediterranean and the Pacific theaters. Its shakedown cruise consisted of Monrovia, Liberia, and South Africa, and that's where the pith helmet come from. How did I get it from a shakedown cruise of a World War II light cruiser? Very easy. My great uncle Albert Boyer was on board the Boise. He died on board the Boise in 1942. Here's a picture of the ship. Now, in one of the port stops in South Africa, my great uncle Albert bought this pith helmet, which he did wear. It has sweat stains visible on it and that sort of thing. And his sister wrote a note and left it stuck to the inside of it, telling about him. It says, Brother Albert Boyer brought back this hat from his stop at Calcutta. India, actually, is where he was at. About 1942 on the USS Boise cruiser. So, yeah, it was in Calcutta, India is where they picked this up. If I'd have read that beforehand, I'd have got that right. Now, the antique part of what Dave's Old Iron is about is I'm going to show you right now. Somewhere in this nearly 3-foot long photograph of all these graduating sailors from the United States Naval Academy in 1938 is a photo of my uncle, or great uncle, Albert. The tape is on here because the glass is broken and the frame is coming apart. So we're going to get the photograph out of here before it gets any more damaged from broken glass, and we're going to put it in a new frame, or otherwise put some plexiglass in this, rebuild the old frame, and put it back into use. But I think we're going to put that photo in a new frame. There may also be a note on the back side of this, which I haven't flipped over recently because of the broken state of the frame and the glass. Maybe a note on the back of it telling me which one of these sailors in this photo is my great Uncle Albert. He used to have a little bit of an X marked on his uniform somewhere, and I haven't found it yet, but I'm going to not look for it until I get the photograph basically secure and out of this old frame and away from this broken glass. Now that the glass has been carefully disposed of, there is a note on the back side of this photograph that says Great Uncle Albert, second row, 10th from the left. So we come down here, second row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That fellow right there. That's my great Uncle Albert Boyer. Now the fellow immediately to his left is a fellow by the name of Ted Jensen. They ended up being bunkmates on board the USS Boise. Ted survived World War II and stopped by 30-some years ago to visit his buddy's sister, my grandmother, and to give me a rifle that Albert somehow or another had on board the USS Boise when he was killed on board it, when a Japanese shell was fired from a heavy Jap cruiser, and the shell hit and, well, penetrated the hull and hit and landed in a ammo magazine on board the USS Boise for its 6-inch main gun turret. That explosion killed 107 men, and it knocked out turrets 1, 2, and 3. Now, this action was, let me grab a note here. This was during the Battle of Cape Esperance on the night of the 11th and 12th of October, 1942. 107 fatalities. Anyway, the Boise made its way back to the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard for repair, arriving on the 19th of November 1942, and was there until the 20th of March of 43 being repaired. Here's photos of it limping into the Philadelphia Naval Yard. Now, how and where Uncle Albert came up with this single-shot .22 rifle is beyond me. Ted never said when he was visiting. He died a few months later because he was battling cancer, which is sad because at the time I wasn't old enough to understand and think to ask questions about what had happened with Uncle Albert, other than Ted was on board when that shell blew up the ammo magazine. And in fact, Uncle Albert was loading ammo and shells into the elevator that ran the stuff up to the second turret, which was the elevated turret right in front of the bridge. And that turret was stuck in the position where it was for the rest of the trip from Cape Esperance back to the Philadelphia yard. They could not get that turret to move. The number 1 turret, I think, if I remember him saying right, they could fire it, but they had to steer the ship to point the guns and had to be at the right distance for the elevation of the guns to hit the target. They got the number 3 turret, which is the one in the back of the ship, working and operational while they were at sea. So the Boise did have a little bit of a defense capability to her, but not much. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get the photo out of the frame now and take a look at the frame and the new frame and see if we can't match them up or whatever we're going to do with it. All right, there is the photo out of that frame, and I'm not kidding you when I tell you it's every bit of 3 foot long, or better actually. I think it's like 38 inches. It's 36 and 3/8 inch by 8. And it says on the back of it, which I have not ever seen, and I don't know anybody else has, right back here on the back of it, to my wonderful mother from Albert. Yeah, so I don't know who's all seen that in the family, but it is on the back of this wonderful photo. Anyway, I'm going to set that over here to the side. And yeah, the frame is the point of the next topic right here. As typical with all the frames of the area, this is wood. And it's come apart here on this corner. I don't know how well you can see it, but it is coming apart. I don't know that I can glue it and hook it together well enough to keep on using it. And it's typical with all of the old photos or pictures of the time, there is a wire running from one side to the other into some little eye hooks at the ends. And this wire was meant to, you put a nail in the wall and then you suspend your photo and you can center it on the nail and it'll hold it straight up and down. Now a lot of times these old photos you would see in the old movies or film photos, whatever, of this wire actually sticking up above the top, which it does do in this case. I don't know, you can't see it because of the light, but yeah, it actually does stick up above the top of the photo or the frame. Now, because this is an old photograph from World War II, it was actually taken in 1941, I would like to preserve that look and have the wire hanging up above the frame once again, whether it be on this old frame or the new one. I still got to check it out. I don't think I'm going to be able to save this old frame. It has seen a lot of rot over the years from moisture and whatnot. So let me take a look at the new frame and see what we can come up with. Now, yes, I did buy a new picture frame for this, but because of the handwriting on the back of it and the details here of some tape that was used to hold the cardboard in the back side of the picture frame from the Buell Hardware store in Buell, Idaho, which was the family's hometown at the time, I'm still going to try to save this if I can, even though the cardboard backing is fairly ripped up here because of that fiberglass reinforced tape that was on it. I am going to attempt to use some Gorilla Glue to glue the corners together, and this one's already had a small nail put in it to help pin it. So if we can keep going with that theory and not split the wood or destroy it anymore in repairing it, we'll go ahead and reuse this old frame. Otherwise, we're on to the new one. And if I have to use the new frame, we're going to mount the old original wire that's on the original frame to that new frame, just to help make it look a little more authentic. Well, one side is hooked together, didn't split out anywhere, and it's been glued and tapped in with a little nail in it right there. So we will continue on and see if we can't get all four corners in ship shape, as it were. Say, y'all know I've been to the dentist recently and had a tooth pulled. Well, I heard one while I was at the dentist office. Yeah, dentist asked me, he says, what do we call our x-rays? Had to think for a minute and couldn't come up with an answer other than x-ray. He said, we call them toothpicks. I did, not my joke, not my joke. It's now the next day. It's darker and drearier looking outside than it was yesterday. And the reason why it's the next day is because I let the glue in the old wooden frame set up overnight. For the most part, the joints look okay. That one don't look too bad. This one's got a little bit of that Linky Magic glue has oozed out, the Gorilla Glue. It got foamy, but unfortunately this piece of the frame here has a twist in it, and yeah, it didn't hold together very well on that end at all. So we're going to go ahead and use the new picture frame, which I already have the photo in. I had to trim about 1/4 of an inch off of each end of the photo so it would fit in the new frame, and we're using the plexiglass over the front of it to hold it all together. Yeah, I don't know about you all, but I absolutely hate those little flat push-in pins that hold the picture and the matting and the glass, or plexiglass in this case, into the picture frame. There is a special tool that puts those back in, but I don't have the tool. I don't do this often enough to warrant purchasing the tool. I do have some window glazing, those little triangle-shaped tack things, somewhere, but don't know where, and I'm just going to do the next best thing of what I got on hand to put it in, and that's why I know I can already hear some of you screaming about what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to use is a dual temperature high-low setting melt gun glue stick thingy. Yeah, well, takes those glue sticks, and we're going to very carefully use this in the corners of the frame and whatnot to hold this backing in tight against the plexiglass front cover of it. Now, I'm not going to run a bead all the way across like you would with, say, caulking in a bathroom around your bathtub or whatever. I'm just going to put little dots here and there. That way, if somebody ever needs to take the photo out, they can just pop that stuff loose, because it isn't going to be enough there to really make it stick. It's just going to be enough to hold it and retain it to keep it from falling out backwards. Once we get that done, I'm going to mark off a couple spots, punch in a couple holes with some small nails, put in some screws and some new wire, and hang it like I was showing you yesterday. I'm going to leave the old screws and the old wire in the old frame, and I'm going to save the old picture frame just in case somebody wants it for a complete restoration later on. There's a TV commercial years ago about something just a dab would do you. I don't remember what the commercial was about, but that is exactly my motto and my philosophy here on this, is just a dab of this stuff will do it. Yeah. Like I said, I just want enough of it to hold this cardboard backer in here, just to tack it in place, and I'm going to hold it here for a second until it cools off a bit. And yeah, we'll just do a couple up here along the top as well, and then we're going to call that part of it good. Now, I'm also going to save the original cardboard backing that had the date of taken 1941, Albert Boyer in the Navy, second row, 10th from the left, that he'd written on here to his mother, or somebody had written on there. Anyway, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to put enough glue on the back of this, just a dab, a dribble on the back of that cardstock, just enough to hold it there. Like I said, so if anybody ever wants to pull this apart and do like a Smithsonian style restoration on it, they can. Okay, there is the original backing cardboard, just very, very lightly attached to the backing that came with the frame. And let's see how it looks from the front. Here, we'll flip it over. Pardon the mess on my desk. I about live here during the cold weather. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Just looking at the margins down here, it's a little, I think the picture slipped and dropped a little bit on this end, but I'm not going to take it apart again to straighten it out. But anyway, that is looking pretty good. Now to move back over to the other desk and put the mounting stuff on it so that it can hang. We'll be done with this little antique project. Picked up this little picture hanging kit at the local hardware store today, and I get it apart there. It comes with a little roll of wire and some small eye hooks. Now, these are a little bit smaller than what was on the original frame, but they're going to work just fine for this application. And I'm going to take one of these nails and use it to measure where I'm going to poke a little hole to start for the screws. Yeah. I'm going to measure the head of the nail off the top of the underside of this stair-step lip here. And that'll give me an idea on where to mount the screw hole, which would be right there. So I'll just take the hammer, tap a small hole in it, put the screw in, and repeat the process over on the other side. Something kind of like that. And then we'll put the screws in. If I can get my fingers to work today. There we go. Now I could have put these up at the top of the picture frame, but that isn't the way they were originally in the original frame. Then we'll flip it around. Do the same thing on the other side. Measure down. It's right about there. Put it in the middle of the board. Lightly tap it. We don't want to tap it too hard and bust something. And then we'll put in the other screw. And yes, if you notice, I left the original tape that they used to hold it all together with from the Buell hardware store from Buell, Idaho. I left as much of that on that cardboard as I could, because that's part of the history of this photo. And that's what Dave's Old Iron's all about. Not just old iron, but antiques and vintage stuff in general. Yeah. Yeah, now here's a predicament. Even stretching out the wire, it doesn't even reach from eyelet to eyelet. So, yeah, we're going to have to do something a little different there for wire for this. So what I've decided to do is unscrew the eyelets from the sides where they normally would be. So I want to leave the old eye hooks and wire intact on the old frame. And we're just going to move these little screws over here to the top piece of the frame in just a couple inches or so from the edge. And hopefully that'll be enough that we'll get some room or add some length, so to speak, to the wire so that we can hook it, loop it through the hooks, and then tie it off to itself so it won't come undone. So something like that, and then the wire can go right through, if I can poke it through the hole there, fold it back on itself, and just twist it exactly like they used to do 17 million years ago. And this is exactly what they did. There. That should work fine. Now, if you say, Dave, those screw hooks with those loopy eyes are not going to let the picture sit flat against the wall, you're 100% correct. And they didn't. If you ever tour through an old vintage home that has pictures hung in this manner, where you can see the wire sticking up above the picture frame, the reason being is back in the day, as they say, ooh, I made a rhyme. The picture frames were, and the photos were always mounted really, really high up on a wall. Why they did that instead of having it about eye level where you could enjoy it and look at it, I don't know, but they mounted it way up. So those eye hooks made the photo kind of tip out a little bit, so it was looking down at the people, if you will, that were viewing the photo or the picture or whatever. And so that's what we're trying to replicate here by leaving those screws where they are instead of putting them on the top edge of the picture frame. By putting them on the back side, it'll tip that photo forward a little bit and make it look a little more realistic to the time period. Okay. Get that through there. See, there really wasn't much in the way of wire available to do this. And when you wind it around there, you want to kind of keep it tight as you can to the loop of the eye. You can't really see what I'm doing, but that keeps it from slipping around so much. Let me get you down there so you can see what I have done. Pardon the jiggle, but you can see here I got it right close to the hook. Yeah, and then that leaves a gobble wire to hang it up with. So yeah, anyway, that's the amount of wire I'm going to run with for now. Even though I probably got way too much, I can always trim up the end and shorten the thing up. That's the nice thing about it. But I still want the wire showing up above the picture frame, make it look old. So now we'll just find a place to put it, and we'll get it hung up. Yeah, there we go. Slide the picture one way or the other, it pulls the wire so it centers itself. Yeah. Now this isn't where it's going to be for its permanent home here in my home, and it's definitely down lower than where it's going to end up being. But it looks all right, and yeah, it looks old-fashioned with that big heavy black frame on it and the wire sticking up there holding that all up. Anyway, I'm Dave, and I'm hoping you enjoyed this little bit of antique trivia from the family. And give it a thumbs up if you would. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today. We'll catch up with you all later when the weather gets a little nicer this weekend, and we'll be outside doing something. Yeah, so don't know what yet, but we'll be outside getting something done. Anyway, we'll catch up with you later. You all have a good one now. Bye-bye.